The subject is Aparigraha. In case of enjoyment of any material object, the control over the subjectivity is called brahmacharya, while the control over objectivity is aparigraha. Deh raksha atirikto bhog sadhana svikaro aparigraha. Non-indulgence in the enjoyment of such amenities and comforts of life as are superfluous for the preservation of life is aparigraha. For our existence we require food, clothes, and also a house to live in. Provision for old age and money and cultivable land for one's dependents are also essential. Therefore, a number of factors have to be taken into consideration to determine an individual's necessity for the preservation of life. It may be that the requirements of any two persons are not similar. It is therefore difficult to determine the minimum requirements for any particular persons, because it is entirely a relative factor. The minimum requirement of a person can to some extent be determined and decided by the society. For example, no one shall accumulate more than a certain amount of money, or no one shall possess more than a certain number of houses, or no one shall be owner of more than a certain area of landed property. But it is not possible for the society to fix the minimum limit in all spheres. Even after setting a limit for land, property, etc., it is not possible to fix a quota in respect of edibles. The voracious may overeat and be attacked with disease. The seekers of luxury may overspend on their luxuries and incur debt. That is why it will be easier for an individual to be established in aparigraha if the individual and the society work together cooperatively. Those items of personal requirement which are left to the discretion of the individual largely depend on the conception of the individual's happiness and comforts. Though this also changes according to time, place and person. For example, one person may easily bear certain physical hardships, while another person under the same circumstances may possibly die. Under these circumstances, the latter requires greater comforts of life than the former to remove his or her difficulty, and this will not be against aparigraha. The place is to be considered also. In the summer season in India, woolen clothing is unnecessary, but it is a necessity in Siberia during that time. Time should be considered also. The minimum necessity of an ordinary person today is not limited to the minimum necessity of an ordinary person in prehistoric age. The reason is that the objects of pleasure are more easily available today and will be available even more easily in the future. Therefore, while practicing aparigraha, if the time factor is neglected, one will become unfit for social life and will have to withdraw from the physical world. Advocating the use of raw sugar, that is good in the age of sugar, and bullock cart in the age of railways has no meaning in the practice of aparigraha. Today, for an ordinary person whose time is not more valuable than that of another travelling by aeroplane is definitely contrary to aparigraha, whereas travelling by rail is certainly not against aparigraha. That is why I said that the society may help individuals to be established in aparigraha by setting a standard in certain spheres of life, but the complete establishment in aparigraha ultimately depends on the individual. Aparigraha is an endless fight to reduce one's own objects of comforts out of sympathy for the common people. After ensuring that individuals are able to maintain solidarity in their physical, mental and spiritual lives for themselves and their families. In practicing Aparigraha, the objects of pleasure will increase or decrease with person, place and time. But the definition of Aparigraha as mentioned above will be applicable to all persons in all countries and at all time. How to live in the society? The establishment of an ideal society depends on the mutual help of the members and their cooperative behavior. This cooperative behavior depends on the practice of the principles of Jam and Niyam. So spiritual practices, especially the practice of Jam and Niyam, are the sound foundation of an ideal society. It is often noticed that individuals incur debt because of their violating the principles of Jam and Niyam, especially due to their extravagance, and as a result, they approach the society for relief. In this connection, I must point out that just as the society is duty-bound to give relief to individuals by combined efforts, so also it must have control over the conduct of individuals, over their practice of the principles of Jam and Niyam, and also over their expenditure. Not to consult anybody at the time of spending money, but to ask for help from all when in debt is not a good practice. Such a mentality cannot be encouraged. To purchase by incurring debt, such where tweed will do, or gabardine where serge will do, is surely against the principle of Aparigraha. Similarly, people should take food which is nutritious but not rich. They have to give up the practice of feeding others with money taken on loan. That is why social control over the individual's conduct and expenditure is indispensably necessary. Hence, all Anandamargis, where they see other Margis acting against the principles of Jam and Niyam, must make them shun this habit either by sweet or harsh words or by dealing even more strictly. Thus, they will have to make the society strong. Henceforth, I direct every Anandamargi to keep strict vigilance on other Anandamargi to make them practice the principles of Jam and Niyama, and also to accept calmly directions of other Margis in this connection. I am also giving one more advice in regard to Aparigraha. If any Margis have to spend on anything in addition to the fixed expenditure, for example, expensive clothing, ornaments, articles of furnitures, marriage, building, etc., they should, before incurring such expenditure, obtain a clear order from their Acharya, unit secretary or district secretary or any other person of responsible rank. Similarly, permission is to be obtained before taking loan from any businessman or money lender. Where one's own Acharya or any person of responsible rank is not easily available, consultation or rather permission is to be obtained from any other Acharya, Tattvik or any right-thinking member of the Marg. Every member should follow the instruction strictly.